Hi, baby boomer fans. We are Jackie and Janine, the Pfeiffer sisters, and love to talk about the 1950s, inviting you to reminisce with us as we explore experiences of that decade.
We chronicled the distinct memories of our childhood in our book, While the Windmill Watched, a slice of rural America in the 1950s, which takes you on a notably historic journey through that often forgotten decade. We also want to hear about your experiences during the 1950s. We will feature guests whose special stories of that decade will bring to mind magical moments of reflection, some with tears, some with smiles, but above all, a good dose of laughter.
We would like you to chat with us as we bring to mind the sights and sounds so familiar to that time in history. Grab your favorite malt or Green River. Make sure you are wide awake and get ready to be inspired about the 1950s. Welcome to the 1950s Fun Chat. Welcome, everybody, and welcome, Jackie. If you viewers are aware, Jackie, or are not aware, rather, Jackie lives in the state of Washington, and I live in the state of Iowa. So when we do these fun chats, we finally have a chance to meet halfway, you might say, across our United States, and it's fun to connect always online because we can see our faces, we can see hear our inflections in our voices, and of course, then we have our guests who are from all over the world, Jackie, who either lived in the 1950s or whose life has been influenced by someone who did live in the 1950s. And of course, this guest with whom we're chatting today is guest number 96, and we're keeping on rolling, aren't we, sister dear?
We are. We are. Hello, everyone.
Yes. And Jackie, can you do some homework for us in the beginning here?
I will do that. Little housekeeping here. And that is, guests, viewers, I'd like to have you notice on the bottom, the purple band on the bottom that has www.whilethewindmillwatch.com. That is our website where you may go to find information on the book, the authors, the events where we are and have been appearing, the vendors. We have quite a list, over 30 of them. So there's a real option, or really a possibility for you to purchase the book pretty much anywhere. And the 1950s Fun Chat. So do go there and look through all of or some of, whatever your time allows, some of the fun chats we've had. Okay, in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, you'll see our book. And the book features a beautiful North Dakota sunset, which wraps around the book. And you'll also notice the little white spot on the lower right-hand corner that indicates this. The book was awarded the 2022 Independent Press Award as the distinguished favorite in the category of regional nonfiction. Now, the book was published in April of 2021. This award came in 2022. And in 2023, this year, we began reading the script for a movie, which will be called While the Windmill Watched. We're very fortunate that a North Dakota historical documenter and movie maker from Canticle Productions is going to base a movie on the book, telling the recent history of rural North Dakota through on the screen. So that's kind of a cool thing. Anything else, Janine, before we get started?
Well, I do want to mention our upcoming book tour, but let's address that at the end and get our guest starting to chat.
Okay. So our guest today is Berta Fair Mohagen. She was born in Grand Forks in 1947, where her family lived while her father finished law school at UND, University of North Dakota, after World War II. So when her dad began his law practice in Grafton, and before she began the second grade, the family moved to a little tiny town called Minto. Berta's family consisted of her mom and dad, 3 sisters, 2 brothers. She was the second oldest child. So after graduating from Minto High School, she received her Bachelor's of Science degree in Business Education, went on to get a master's degree from UND, followed by earning a PhD from the University of Minnesota in Education. She has taught many, many classes in a variety of schools. She taught in Grafton State School, in PSEC, and Larimore High School before spending 10 years at her dream job at UND, University of North Dakota. Berta married her high school sweetheart, and 2 children resulted. Berta has 7 grandchildren, ranging in age from 12 to 30, the oldest of whom will be married this summer, so that should be a fun event. Berta has lived in Fargo, North Dakota for the past 33 years. And Berta, we welcome you to the 1950s Fun Chat.
Yes.
Thank you so much. I'm just thrilled to be here.
Thank you. We're thrilled to have you. So we're going to start out by talking of your move, which was a highlight, or not a highlight, but it made a big difference in your life. I'd like to have you compare the city of Grand Forks with the small town life of Minto. First of all, why did your parents move to Minto rather than to Grafton, where your father had his law office?
Well, my mother's family had a big home in Minto. And so with a family of 4, soon to be 6 kids, the big house provided made sense. And Minto is only 10 miles from Grafton, so it was pretty easy for our dad to drive each day to his job.
Mm-hmm.
And when we lived in Minto, we were living in what was called the Tin Huts. And I remember our address, it was S12 Tennis Village. And this was kind of temporary housing that had been thrown up to accommodate, GIs coming back after the Second World War to attend the university. Mm-hmm. And one of the things I remember about living in Tennis Village was learning to ride my bike. And I could pedal standing up and go just fine. But if I had to sit down on the seat, oh my gosh, I'd always crash. And so I thought one day I was going to be really brave and go through the gate and sit down at the same time. Not a smart decision. So anyway, we also had baths in the kitchen sink, the biggest of us kids. And my dad had a job part-time as kind of a janitor at the law school. And sometimes he would take my sister Ellen and me to help him dust.
Mm.
So we'd get to dust the spindles between all the railing. Mm. And then when we were done, if we were really good and had done our work well, then we'd get to go to the YMCA and have an orange crush.
Mm.
And that was very swell because Ellen usually didn't finish her pop. And so I got to have the tail end of hers too. And even then I liked pop. So
I'm going to interject in talking about dusting those spindles. Was there a secret to it or what? How did you go about doing it to make sure?
No, we had a dust rag. And yeah. I don't know if we had pledge or I don't know what. We didn't have the can, but I imagine there was some on the rag. And you just went around and did this. There was no rhyme, no reason to it. But we were kids and we got to go someplace with our dad and, it was fun. And then we got to have Orange Crush. So it was all great.
Were your younger siblings anxious to be a part of that work crew eventually, just to, in order to get that?
They were too little yet. Ellen and I were probably only 5 and 4 or something.
Oh, yes.
And then the next in line was 4 years younger than I was. So we moved to Minto before he got a chance to be, dusting at the law school.
Yeah. Okay. So anything else? What about comparison? Your family life?
Yep, I forgot. So we were so young. We weren't paying attention to much of anything except, going about our business. And we weren't too aware, I don't think, that Grand Forks was a big town because our little section was Tennis Village, this little cluster of huts at the university. But in retrospect, we were sort of made aware because I went to kindergarten and first grade in Grand Forks, and that was a ways across town. And so we were kind of out of our little pod, if you will.
Sure.
but Minto was amazing because it was so small that the kids could play outside, and everybody in town looked after everybody else's kids. And if your mother called her friend down the street and she said you were being a brat, then you would be in trouble when you got home. So
Did you have a telephone back then?
we did. I don't remember my phone number in Grand Forks, but in Minto, our first number was 4301.
And a party line, probably.
No, we didn't have a party line, but the farm kids had party lines. And so we would hear about conversations, and you had to be very careful when you were talking to your boyfriend, because somebody else could be on that party line, and you might or might not want that published all over town, which it certainly would be. So,
yes. It's interesting in small towns. There the positives and the negatives as far as privacy goes.
Which that's true. The safety aspect of not very much privacy was huge, but as I said, you couldn't get away with the darn thing. I mean, it was the whole "it takes a village" thing was certainly true in Minto in the 50s.
Right. So you taught a variety of subjects, and if you feel you'd like to interject that anytime, please do. But my question now is, give us a little history of the Grafton State School. It started in 1901. And
I probably can't do this justice historically in every detail, but it was originally built, and it was called the Grafton State School for the Feeble-Minded. And it was a place to put kids who had either severe or not very severe mental difficulties or learning disabilities, as we would call them now. And sometimes it was just a place for parents to warehouse their kids when they weren't or didn't care to take care of them. And I worked there for about 6 years total, and I can't even tell you what a shock it was to my system, because I hadn't ever even toured the place. Our psychology classes and so on often toured the Grafton State School just as a eye-opener kind of thing, but I never had for some reason. And it was a interesting thing to be working at. But so anyway, so there were lots of kids there who absolutely didn't belong there, and they often were referred to as oh shucks, I've forgotten that word now. But anyway, they would help take care of and provide for the more seriously handicapped. And then while I was working there, the Public Law 94-142 was enacted, which provided for getting kids from the state school and every place like that, and even not in group homes like that, into the least restrictive educational environment possible. And there was a great big lawsuit in North Dakota that was trying to get the capable ones out of the state school and into group homes or other kinds of places. And then it went through a series of name changes, and in Grafton and all around the state, there were lots and lots of group homes. And the population when I started working there was about 1,500, which was quite a lot. And then as they got the kids out into the group homes, it went down and down and down. And it's the state school now has been remodeled into apartments and so on, and there are lots of places for people to live with modest incomes at the Grafton State School. So
what was Berta, what was the age range of the students who were at the state school?
Well, they range from babies. I remember one poor little person with hydrocephalus.
Yeah.
And so he was there. And in fact, my mother-in-law worked in the hospital where the sick kids and the babies were. And she loved those kids and took such good care of them. And then the oldest were men who were in a living situation where they were adults and they had jobs on the farm, which was discontinued after a while. So they took care of the cows or the pigs or the chickens or the garden or whatever. And they were so proud to have a job and to earn a little money and to have some respect and some sense of dignity and some
Mhm.
sense of earning their way. So that was a great thing for them. And it was a real disappointment when they took the farm away,
Oh,
because then those folks had nothing to do. So
oh,
that was a disappointment for them.
yes, yes, very much so. Hmm. Well, how did you taught at the Grafton State School? How how did you design your 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 curriculum in order to meet the needs of the students?
Well, I taught in the recreation department, and
Hmm.
so we weren't very fussy about lesson plans and those kinds of things. We had a group at a time, scheduled throughout the day, either to take him to the gym or outside for a walk or over to the merry-go-round, or in the summertime over to the swimming pool, which was a huge hit, or sometimes take them to the bowling alley in the wintertime. That was lots of fun.
Hmm.
And then I forget, it might have been Tuesday nights, we had movies, and then one night a week, and that maybe was Friday, were dances. So the recreation department provided lots of things for the
Hmm.
residents to do, and it was fun. The you know Something that I think is important is to remember, as I learned, that the kids who were there were way more like us than they were different from us.
Hmm.
And at the time I first started working there, my kids were young, and the state school kids were just like mine. They wanted to be loved, and they wanted to
Hmm.
be able to do things, and they wanted to feel secure, and they wanted to have fun, and that was a revelation for me.
Mhm.
So
Hmm.
I enjoyed my
Hmm.
time there very much.
Oh,
Good,
super.
good. Hmm.
So, you have had a variety of teaching experiences. Can you give us a rundown on those?
Oh, sure, I'd love to. My first real teaching job, besides at the state school, which recreation wasn't real teaching. It was providing recreation for the kids. But in Pizik, which is a tiny little town by Park River, I taught all the business ed subjects. Let's see, consumer math and typing and accounting and phy ed and elementary phy ed and kindergarten music. And then I also coached basketball and volleyball. And I advised 3 squads of cheerleaders, and I advised the GA, the sophomore class, and the pep club. And if I'd been able to drive a straight stick, I would have had to drive a bus to the ball games too. So I was always grateful for that efficiency.
Yeah.
And then at Larimore, I taught traditional business ed stuff. I taught typing and shorthand and office procedures, and I was also in charge of the work experience program, where kids went out to an office in the community and worked a few
Mhm.
hours a week to get some real world experience. So that was fun. And there I had 6 squads of cheerleaders and the FBLA. And we even took a group of FBLA kids to the national convention in San Francisco one year. We took 3 Larimore kids and our 2 kids in our van and drove out to San Francisco. And as luck would have it, I had breakfast a few days ago with one of the kids that went to San Francisco with us. And she was just remarkable. She was so talented and so good at everything. And it was just a thrill. And she too is retired. So you know how things are going. Then at UND, I taught the business ed methods classes, methods of shorthand and typing and so
Mhm.
on. And then I taught business communications, which was a required course for all of the students in the College of Business. So I had lots of those. I liked that too.
Hmm.
And then after a while, I taught the Intro to MIS course, which was also required.
the variety of classes which you taught and coached, how did you ever feel prepared for all of those responsibilities? I'm thinking especially coaching the cheerleaders or coaching the basketball team or
Well, I was a cheerleader, so I know about that, and that was my absolute favorite thing in high school. Now we're getting, did track the years, and the first time I got to be a cheerleader was in the 8th grade, and oh my gosh, I thought I died and gone to heaven. And this is outside the 50s, but a few years later, when I was in high school, I got really sick with scarlet fever. And I told my mom if I died, she was supposed to bury me in my cheerleading uniform. So, anyway, but the other things, I mean, my business ed training was good, and I had a minor in Phi Ed, so I could do those things. But honest and truly, I'd never played basketball or volleyball because at Minto, we didn't have any sports for girls except cheerleading until I was a senior, and we got track. But, I think if you're given something to do and you accept the job, then you prepare as well as you can and hope for the best.
Yes,
That's right.
yes. Well, I'm curious to know, do you still cling to that cheerleading outfit?
I have my maroon skirt up in my closet upstairs, but we didn't have, like today, the cheerleading sweaters and so on are so fancy and have all these stripes and all that stuff. We didn't have any of those. We just had to hope to find a maroon or a white sweater.
Mhm.
And I don't have any of those, but I have my letters with all my little
Okay.
gugas on there. So,
Yes. And do you have your pom-poms?
we didn't do pom-poms. Every once in a while we'd make some, but they were pretty cheesy, so we didn't keep them from year to year.
As cheerleaders, was your only school responsibility to cheer at games, or did you have to do things for the team? Just
in those olden days, we didn't toilet paper houses or put signs and some of that kind of stuff. It was pretty much just cheerleading at the games, and it was kind of interesting because if you played in the band, you had to race up on the stage and do the school song. And sometimes the basketball players would be there in their warm-ups up on the stage to do the school song and the Star Spangled Banner. So I love that.
Yeah.
Did the school provide transportation for you at the team and the cheerleaders for out-of-town games?
No. Especially in the 50s when, as I said, when I was a cheerleader for 8th grade, my dads would take turns hauling the cheerleaders because, oh my gosh, the girls might distract the boys if they were on the bus with them. So we didn't.
I don't know that it's a practice even today that the cheerleaders travel with the team.
Well, lots of schools do that. When my son was playing at Red River, the cheerleaders went with it. I mean, it's just kind of a school thing or a city thing, whatever. Mostly, I think it's whatever some bossy mama decides is good for her daughter, who's a cheerleader.
Yeah. And it would be better financially if they all had one bus rather than two.
Yes, absolutely.
So when you've had a variety of teaching experiences, so what stands out as one or two or several of the most rewarding experiences?
Let me think here. Some of the most rewarding things for me was at the FBLA banquet in Larimore. And, I hadn't done this before, and so I had no idea what to expect. But the FBLA kids bought a present for me, and it was a blue glass candy dish. And I thought it was the swellest thing, and I still have it. And let me think what else. Well, I think maybe backing up to the state school, having that epiphany where I realized that these kids weren't so different. They maybe looked a little different, and some were physically handicapped and some were mentally handicapped, but they were pretty much regular kids in all ways except those.
Yeah, Berta, what is FBLA?
It's Future Business Leaders of America,
Okay.
and it's the youth organization at the high school level, which encourages business students to pursue leadership opportunities and opportunities in areas which are good. The FBLA state convention is an opportunity for kids to participate in contests like accounting and public speaking and so on, to test their skills against other kids from around the state.
Sure, sure. That's wonderful to have that opportunity.
Oh,
Right.
it was fabulous. It was just excellent. And the kids that were going to San Francisco with us had won first or second place in some contest at the state convention.
Hmm
So
what a wonderful experience for those young people.
it was just excellent.
Yep.
And for me too.
Sure. Yes.
So if you were to give a blanket piece of advice to students, no matter what their age or even lifelong learners, what might that be?
When I was working at UND and supervising business ed student teachers, we had a class called Senior Seminar. And we placed most of our kids in the Grand Forks Public Schools, of course, and we'd get them back on campus on Wednesdays and ask them to tell us what was going on during the week and so on and so forth, and buck them up if they were feeling a little down, or give them some advice if they asked for it. And I always like to tell them that expect the best out of your students. If you expect them to behave themselves and do what you ask, they pretty much will. But if you go into class expecting them to be brats, they'll accommodate you too.
Sure.
And so that was one of the things. Tell me the question again. I got off on the track there.
Do you have any advice? And I think you just said it. Expect the best. Yeah, that reminds me. That's called the Pygmalion theory.
I suppose.
Yeah.
The other thing I told them was that I got to do what I love best in all the world, and that's teach school and teach kids and get paid for it. But I said teaching is very hard work. And considering that you're going to work about 40 years outside of your home, you want to pick something that makes you happy, because it's way too hard to work to do it if you don't like it.
That's right.
Berta, do you recall any experiences that those student teachers might have brought to you or brought to that class when you all got back together again, for which they needed help? They were really at a loss.
There were some. I had one much older than average student teacher, and this is way back a million years ago when computers were just being integrated into the schools. And this older than average student teacher was not pleased with that transition. And she was student teaching at Thompson, and she was not doing very well. She was anxious. And so anyway, I went to visit her, and she said, "Oh, Mrs. Berta," she said, I'm just scared to go into that computer lab, because I'm just sure that those computers are saying, here she comes again." Yeah, she was not having a good time. And one other thing was that, student teachers are generally in their senior year of college, which makes them about 22 or maybe 23 or maybe 21. And either very handsome young men or very attractive young women are not that much older than juniors or seniors in high school. And so sometimes there'd be some occasion when some student is trying to hit on some student teacher, and how to deal with that issue was interesting. And in the senior seminar, I had found an article about some young man whose career had been ruined because he had allowed a very pushy high school girl to presume things that were not true. And so I tell them, keep the door closed at all times and have your office mate there if you're having office hours and so on, because it you just want to protect yourself from difficult situations.
Certainly. Do you recall, did any of your student teachers end up marrying someone from the school that in which they were teaching, whether it been a
Well,
public teacher or
I had the situation where it wasn't a student teacher, but one of the faculty, and I won't tell you which school, but one of the faculty married a senior girl about 20 minutes after she graduated from high school.
oh,
There
oh,
was
That
so
one, but you know what? The parents approved, and so it was no big deal.
mm-hmm,
Mhm.
And well, anyway, I
Yeah.
won't go there.
Okay.
yes, yes, Berta.
So,
Berta, what do you remember as being something fun from the 1950s?
Well, for me, one of the funnest things was coming home the day that school was out for the year and taking our books and our notebooks and our stuff either to our friend's basement or to our garage and playing school.
oh no kidding.
Yep, I was playing school and being, but you know, when I had an older sister, she almost always got to be the teacher and I had to be the student, which was
Yeah.
but as it turned out, 4 of the 6 of us siblings were teachers, or well, no one is teaching anymore. But
Mhm.
our mother was a teacher too, and so it was kind of in our blood to be doing that.
Were you
Mhm.
all teachers in the same area of study?
Well, let's see. Ellen and I were business ed teachers, and our 2 brothers were social studies teachers.
Okay.
And our one brother only taught for a few years and then he went to law school, but our younger brother Doug taught social studies in another small town in North Dakota, Wilton, for about 27 years. You know,
Oh,
so
okay.
and it made my heart so happy. I went to many times, but in this one particular case, I went to a restaurant, and I'm kind of a busybody, and so I chat up the guy who is taking my credit card, you know, and this young man said he was from Wilton. And I said, "Oh, really? Well, did you ever have my brother Doug Fair for a teacher?" And he said, "Oh, yes, he was my favorite teacher ever. I was going to be a social studies teacher, but then I got this job, and it pays me a lot more money than being a teacher." So anyway, but that happened many times that somebody had Doug and were thrilled with his coaching and his teaching and so on.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's neat with the relationship, the student teacher relationships, the positive ones that can develop.
oh, they're just multitudinous, and they go on forever. I mean, the one of the kids from Pizik that I saw, I hadn't seen since 1977, and the one from Larimore I hadn't seen since, let's see, about well, I don't know, 35 years at the very least, and probably 40. You know, so
Mhm.
the ties that bind aren't always kept updated very often, but
Yes.
so lovely when they do take place.
Mhm.
Mhm.
In our book, Jackie and I give credit to our grades 1 through 4 teacher at Minokan School, Mrs. Violet Arntz. She was a marvelous, marvelous person and creative and talented and like you, loved to teach. And she
Mhm.
just had that in her. You could see it just
The joy.
yeah, exploded from her, and
She's
that
just oozing.
That's right.
yes,
Yeah,
Yeah.
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 well,
It-
she prepared us well in those first 4 years
Mhm.
for our life.
well,
It's we have
I
just
have
such
a couple
fun.
of favorite teachers too who had such an impact on me. The first one was Mrs. Coffee. She was our 6th grade teacher, and she was so smart, and um, she taught us grammar and punctuation and so on.
Mhm.
Very diligent about that, and that was huge. But she did something. Um, Somewhere in the midst of my career, I learned about and implemented cooperative education, the idea that everybody learns better if everyone learns together. So I don't know if Mrs. Coffey even knew she was a trendsetter, but she had us do spelling a few times where we'd get our spelling words on Monday, and then on Friday we'd have our spelling test. And the row that you were in was your team. Okay. And everybody would get the grade that the worst student got.
Yes.
And so busybody that I was, we had a boy in our class who hadn't spoken English until he came to school. He had spoken only Polish before that, and he was kind of an indifferent student, but he was in my row. And so I made it my business to teach him those spelling words. And by golly, he got 100. For the first time in the history of the world, he got 100, and he was so excited. And so was I, frankly. Yes. And the other one was Tanny Stimson. She came to Minto when I was a senior, and she taught the business ed stuff. And I loved her. She was young. She was teaching right fresh out of college, and her husband was going to law school in Grand Forks. So she was only there 3 years. But we bonded somehow, and we're still friends. And she lives in Lincoln. And my daughter lives in Omaha, so sometimes when I go to Omaha, we'll meet in the middle and have lunch or something. And
cool.
But it is interesting to know how profound the influence of teachers who care about you can be, and that's been my very great joy and pleasure to have these kids tell me that I somehow had some impact on their lives, and they'll say, remember, and I don't even remember, but it had some huge influence on them, and for that I'm grateful.
Certainly there are tears involved when you hear that.
Yes, well, I used to be a big crybaby, but I had an epiphany, and now I'm better. But anyway, my student from Larimore got all teary-eyed when she was telling me things. And so you're right. Sometimes it can be incredibly moving to tell or to hear some very huge impact in your life.
Yeah.
Berta, what from the 50s has been the most influential in your life as an adult?
I guess my dad died in 1963 when I was still in high school. And so the 50s for me is kind of the time when things were all good yet. Our family was happy, and I don't think we knew that we were poor. We had plenty to eat, and we had a grandma and grandpa who spoiled us pretty much, and our mom and dad loved us. And, so that security and that sense of belonging and being was huge. And it kind of made you strong for when things got a little tougher. You could buck up and say, okay, I can do this. Not that I get any choice, but I'm going to do it, and I'm going to do it the best I can.
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
So,
Self-confidence.
Yes, indeed.
Viewers, we've had a wonderful chat with our friend, Roberta Mohagen, who now lives in Fargo, and we're just so grateful to have had this opportunity to learn about her childhood in the 1950s and even beyond experiences beyond that, and how she shared with us about we can do it. We can do it. When
we can.
Yep, we know that there's an obstacle ahead. We can make amends and make our minds work around those obstacles and do it. So thank you for those encouraging words, Berta. This has been wonderful.
Thank you so much. I was thrilled to be part of your fun chat.
Thank you. It's our pleasure.
Very welcome.
So, before we close, yes, I do want to touch on our upcoming third North Dakota book tour, Jackie, that is going to be taking place the end of September, first part of October. And when we talk about it's appropriate time to talk about it because we've been talking about teaching and education. And that's one thing that you and I, Jackie, love to do is tell the story of the 1950s, not just our story, but all the changes that occurred in the 1950s. And while we're on our book tour, we are intending to visit with many classes around the Bismarck area area, both public and parochial schools that teach North Dakota history, as we think that it's a great opportunity for kids to learn history from two live women, not just learning dates and figures and facts, that type of thing, but
Really?
all of the history that occurred in their backyard, you might say, in the 1950s. So we still have many dates to lock in when we're in that area. We do have a few already, but if you have a school or is interested in bringing us in to even Zoom with you, we love to Zoom with you. If we can't be there in person, please contact us at wildthewindmillwatch.com, and there's a place in our website where you can contact us. We'd love to be a part of your history teaching activities. So now, Jackie, yes, Berta.
Janine, could I ask one question? Are you coming to Fargo on your book tour?
It's this year. It's doubtful. We've been there the last 2 years, so we're starting out because we have vendors in Northwest North Dakota, and we have never been there, and they've wanted us to come for book signings. So we are going to be in Northwest North Dakota for some activities, and then we're heading down to the Bismarck area where we anticipate having a lot going on.
Okay.
It's all dependent as far as going farther east is dependent on how much time Jackie and I want to be, and our husbands want to be away from home and that type of thing.
So when are the dates that you'll be in Bismarck? Do you know roughly?
After October 1st, that week, starting Monday, October 2nd.
Oh, my birthday.
And okay, and I am saying right now we do have one engagement scheduled. If I'm right, on that Wednesday with schools. So we're kind of hoping to fill in those times in Bismarck. And I think temporarily we were considering, sister, is that correct? Maybe heading back home towards the end of that week.
Nothing is
yet. We're flexible. If there are opportunities in Fargo, we'd like to learn of them, and if we can't be there face to face, at least to be able to Zoom into the classrooms.
And maybe you know that there's a North Dakota requires North Dakota history, especially focus on agriculture, geography, and history of the state in grades 4 and in grades 8. So that's our focus. So we have a couple more things to say, and that is, the viewers, here are 2 colors to remember: red and blue. Blue, thumbs up, hit that button. Red, subscribe button.
And realize too, there are people, I think a lot of people in our age group, who might not realize that subscribing is free on a YouTube channel. Just click the button and you will get notices when the fun chats are going to run.
So until next time, tell your friends, even your relatives, about the 1950s Fun Chat. So until next time, toodaloo.
Bye-bye.